Andrew over at Maple Leaf Customs has invited the community to join him in a build to celebrate Canada Day. For my build, I decided to use this old Kenner Fast Ones casting. It's called a Hurricane. And I decided that I wanted to give it a livery to match that to some degree of the Canadian Air Force performance team, the Snowbirds. So with that in mind, I thought this casting would have a good look, kind of looking like a plane in a way. And so as you see here, I took it apart. It has a metal body. Everything else is plastic, plastic base, plastic interior section. It's a little dirty inside. The glass, fortunately, isn't scratched really terribly or cracked. It's just really dirty and a little scuffed. The interior of the chrome was fantastic. It's too bad it's going to go away. The wheels, as you can see there, the axles are held in place with a little tab on both ends. I'm obviously not going to keep these terrible wheels. So I was trying to pop them out of there as easily as possible. I kind of end up bending them a little bit to get them out of the way, which is fine. I did manage to do this without snapping either of the tabs, which is important to me because they end up holding the axle in place on the final build. I don't put axle tubes on this or anything like that. The chrome base needed to be stripped because I am going to paint that. So I ran a wire through. I like to do this. I use a wire through things a lot when I go to dunk them in something, like stripper in this case for the plastic base. Super clean to strip that chrome off of there. Super clean works great for that. In the meantime, I had stripped the casting itself, as you see here. It has very small posts at the front and back. So I do end up drilling and tapping it and putting 172 screws in it. The posts are far too small to put a 256 in. So I get this thing drilled and tapped. And as you can see here, I just work my way with the tap. It turns out fine. And then as you can see here, the base has had the chrome stripped off of it at this point. Grab a couple 172 screws, and I want to fit this together to, see what it looks like. I can't help but laugh. The 172 screws, as if the 256 aren't small enough, the 172 screws are ridiculously small. But I throw them in here just to see, make sure everything still fits together well, that the depth on the screws will hold it together snugly, that kind of thing, And so I throw a screw in both posts. And sure enough, this thing's looking the way I want. I can kind of imagine how I want this to look. And I don't know if you remember the picture at the start of this of the Snowbird. But the top half is white, and then there's a red bottom on this. So that's what I do with this casting as well. I use those two separate pieces. The bottom piece is going to be red. The upper body of this is going to be white. And then I'm going to come up with decals to go on that white portion of the casting. The casting it's in good shape. Don't get me wrong. It's in really good shape. Could have been a lot worse. But even with that, there were areas that needed to be cleaned up a little bit. And so I do file things as usual. This section of the video is sped up, 5 times normal speed. So there was a lot of filing that went on and more than I even recorded. And when you file it, then after I file it, I go over it with the buffing wheel on the Dremel tool and just get everything kind of smoothed out and looking good. There's some things as I was working on this that I realized that the back of this, the engines have 2 exhausts, and then there's a lot of other panels back there that I decided not to paint different than body color. In other words, as if they're closed off vents that can be opened, but aren't in this case. But anyhow, you'll see that a little later. Got it all buffed up, as you can see there. And now it's time to prepare it for paint. I do it in the usual way that you've seen me do this. I dip it in IPA, isopropyl alcohol, just to clean the casting up, get any oil from my hands that are on it, any residue from the buffing process, anything like that, to clean the casting up so that the primer will go on well, the paint will adhere well. That's what I'm after. And so it has always worked out well for me doing it this way. The paints, I use the color shot paints again, marshmallow white for the top half, stiletto for the bottom half, clear sealer over everything once prior to decals going on and then after the decals go on. I did come up with a custom decal set for this because, like I said, I'm doing the Canadian Snowbirds team. So there aren't a lot of decals for die-cast cars that have that kind of theme on it. I did a little research on the internet, came up with the designs. There you see what I came up with. I did some in various sizes because I wasn't sure exactly what would look best on the casting. I decided on the number 2 for the plane or for the car to go on the back rudder. Just because I thought the number 2 would fill the area well. Sometimes a 1 can just look like a dash, and something like an 8 might look odd or too fat for the shape of the area. All in all, I'm thrilled with how this turned out. Really happy with how the decal set turned out. I think the overall look really works for this. It goes well with the shape of the casting. Now for the glass, it was yellowed, so after I cleaned it and polished it, I wasn't still happy with it. So I did this mix, 50% water, 50% hydrogen peroxide, stuck the glass in that, and then stuck it outside for several hours. And this thing will bubble up, it's fun. So set that outside to kind of get that yellowing off. The interior, it's almost a shame to strip the chrome off of this, but I'm looking for a military jet look. And generally military jets don't have a lot of chrome. So I do use Super Clean to strip the paint off this section. I do end up spray painting it with a aluminum metallic look. It's the can says it's aluminum, I think chrome. It's not chrome, but it gives it a good metal look. Here you see it after it's been painted. I paint the black exhausts on those engines. And I do a bunch of detailing to this section, including the interior portion. And that was actually a lot of fun because through the glass, you can see a lot of the detail from the interior section. So on the interior, I went over the seats with Nuln Oil to make the individual panels of the seat pop out, that kind of thing. It was gauzy, gauzy, gauzy time for the glass. Almost didn't get that in there. That's after cleaning off the glass, letting it sit outside for several hours, rinsing it off. I was pretty happy with how clear the glass became. And so the gauzy would just finish it off. So I was really happy with the end result for the glass. It's not perfect, but it's not new glass. It wasn't cracked, it wasn't chipped or anything like that. It was scuffed up a little. I was able to get a lot of that out of it. So in the end, you can see through the glass, which worked out really well. But that's about it. And so here you see the body itself with the livery on it. I'm really happy with the livery, how it worked out. The individual decals, the placement of the decals. I took a little time in figuring out what I wanted where, and that when I was sizing the decals, I really put what I wanted where it was on the plane, on the casting, and it was very similar to the plane itself in the location. Naturally, there's some things you can't do because this is, a tiny little casting. It's not a full-size plane. There you see the red base as well. At this point, the wheels, I did wheel swap it. The wheels have a very thin axle on them that was able to still use that snap or tab to hold the wheels in place. And I thought that the wheels have a real good look to them. I wish I could recall where I got them, but they were in a big box of different wheels I have. I know I bought them somewhere. I know they're not Redline wheels. I know they're not Samed wheels. I just don't recall where I got them, but they have a real good look to them, and I think they go well with this casting as well. You can kind of see the detail on the engine there in the interior section. And it does roll. As I think I show you here in a second. I'm too busy looking at this thing at this point. But yeah, it rolls. And it's not the fastest thing on earth, but yeah, it rolls. So here again is where we started. You can see what I'm talking about the glass. You know, it's scuffed. It's not really chipped or cracked or anything like that. I was not going to put a license plate on it. You can see how the back end would just, there's the exhaust. So if there's the exhaust from the engine, what are these other panels supposed to be? So I'm assuming they're vents that can be opened and closed. That's how I'm treating them. Here you can see how you can see the interior through that interestingly shaped glass. And I tried to pick out details in there to just add a little more to this. Same with the engine. If you look at the top of the engine, you'll see that in some of the glamour shots. I'm really happy with how it turned out. So there you have it. This is the build in celebration of Canada Day. Thanks again to Maple Leaf Customs, Andrew over there for hosting this event again this year. It's a lot of fun. I'm glad he opens it up to everybody in the world, not just Canadians. And anyhow, be sure and check out his build on his Maple Leaf Customs channel and a recap video that he will be doing as well, and all of the other builds in this event. I hope you like this build. I'm thrilled with how this thing turned out. Everybody stay safe and healthy out there, and I'll catch you in the next one.